tools. One of the terms I use a lot is we are in a solution-rich environment in terms of IT. There's so many, no matter what it is you're looking to do, there's so many ways to do it, so many ways to accomplish it. All of them have pluses, all of them have minuses, they have challenges, they open opportunities, all that fun stuff. And given the fact that we've already got a workforce, in most cases, that has a certain level of computer skills, the tools are a lot easier to use because they usually work within, if you have some idea of Excel or some idea of Access or whatever, you can use these other tools. That said, the mindset of the organization. If the organization does not say, we're going to place value on information, and we are going to take this information and turn them into actionable items. If you have a dashboard that has a bunch of key performance indicators and they're always red, and yeah, that's okay, they don't mean anything. Okay. Kind of puts a damper in that. And then, what are you looking to get? Yeah. What are the meaningful questions? How are we doing? Sucks as a meaningful question, because how's that quantifiable? How do we actually measure that? But if we have some, here's how we measure that performance, or here's how we measure those things, and they work well against the data that we're accumulating, okay, now we can do something. So.
Agreed. You get off easy on that one.
And then know your data. Know what you got. Know its limitations. Know how and when it gets entered. And what the perspective is. Reports are answers to questions. That's all a report is, in my opinion. Now, in some cases, the question is crazy. It's not well defined. In which case the report is not well defined. In some cases, the question is meaningless, in which case the report really doesn't have much value. But whenever you're basically saying, we'd like to have a report that shows, one of the first questions I ask is, what question are you asking? And if you don't have, and it doesn't have to be this long drawn out, what question are you asking? And then, what is the best way to answer that question? Because otherwise, it's a report without meaning. Now, there are some folks who will say, I want to have this multi-purpose report. Okay, great. There's two reasons to have this multi-purpose report. One is you're a freaking genius and can take that report and look at it any way, shape, or form. And the second is you don't want to actually sit down and answer that hard question of what question are you asking. Okay? My wife says, only because it's true, that I have a tendency to procrastinate. And one of these days I'm going to get back to her with an answer to that. Pause for laughter. And I can justify till the cows come home about, well, no, I'm a cautious planner. I don't want to commit resources or commit to. You can call it anything you want. You're a damn procrastinator. And she's right. And the same thing is here. If you're not clear on what questions you're trying to answer by pulling data out and making it meaningful, making it information, I don't care what you say. You're not thinking it through. So, tools. How do we actually do this? To start with, we have to store the bloody stuff, okay? And we're just giving you 3 examples here. There's, first of all, SQL. Now, a lot of people are running applications where there's actually an instance of what's called SQL Express, which is a free version of Microsoft SQL Server, which creates a little database for that application on the server or desktop or workstation. And you can go after that data, you can look at it, but you're a little bit limited in terms of the reporting tools and all that fun stuff that you can use. Other slightly larger organizations actually buy a license of SQL Server. And that includes a lot of tools, free, no additional charge. SQL Server reporting services, which I think we're going to take a look at in a minute.
Yes.
Okay. And there's some other tools. And then finally there's the big one, which would be SQL Enterprise, which has a lot of data analysis tools and all that fun stuff. But then you've got access databases. You can actually put in databases in Excel. So your data can be any of those. Retrieving information, SSRS, again, if you already have SQL Server reporting services is included in that. Not with the Express version, but for the fee-based versions of SQL it is. And then you have Crystal Reports, which is a very good report writer that you can generate your own reports against any database. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt, Bob.
Go for it.
Does that start with a certain version of SQL Server?
Good question. SQL Server 2000 Release 2, there was a midpoint release of about 2000, it stunk. Okay? Really, SQL Server 2005 was the first version that had a decent one. And then there's 2008, and now there's 2008 R2. A lot of, actually Doug and I were just talking about this morning, a lot of enhancements that happened to 2008 and 2008 R2 were for the reporting services. So there's a lot of enhancements to those tool sets. But 2005 was really the first version that was useful.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm good.
Just a nod? Okay. Crystal Reports is very nice. It is I don't want to say a difficult product, but it's a product you got to learn. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It also, you have to buy a copy of it for everybody who's going to create reports. SSRS is if you can touch the SQL box, you can write your own reports. Crystal, if you have 5 people who are going to write reports, it's 5 licenses, and it goes up from there, price-wise.
And the license...
You're saying the SSRS is not licensed?
It's license-based, it's part of SQL Server. So whatever license you have with the instance of SQL Server, that's your license for SSRS.
Oh, okay. It's not an independent license.
Right.
And the licensing fees of the other solutions are not a number to sneeze at. In fact, often a project can be justified just by not buying the licenses. And that's something Microsoft's counting on. Last year, Bob and I did a project for a larger firm, just a department in a larger firm. But that was entirely how they funded the project, is they no longer had to buy 700 individual licenses at $700 a piece.
Yep. Now, one of the nice things is that Excel, Access, even Crystal Reports to a certain degree, have a very common user interface. So, people are going to be able to use some skill sets developed on one tool and work on the other and all that fun stuff. So, again, file cabinet's bad. Pause for laughter.
Is everyone proficient with Excel? Is there anyone that doesn't use Excel at least now and then? No?
I started raising my
Oh,
hand.
Bob, yeah. Well, Bob delegates to everyone. It's like, get it done in Excel.
What else is new?
Excel is without a doubt, I think, one of the best applications that has ever come out for anything. You can use it for an unimaginable number of scenarios. Creating forms. It could be a database. It could be a list. It could sort. It can print. It can print really nice looking things. But Excel to me is one tool that we should all have it up our sleeves. And Microsoft has a lot of free little quickie training videos out there on the web.
Yeah.
So if you were just to get one tip in Excel every day, by the end of the year, I think you would be impressed with how much you can simplify your life.
Just to add on to that, Excel 2010 especially has a lot of tools as far as the data mining and working with it. And also, if you combine Excel 2010 with SharePoint Foundation Server, which is the 2010 version of SharePoint, you can actually start building KPI dashboards onto your SharePoint sites. So there's some cool stuff there.
Through Excel?
Yeah.
Really?
Yepers. Yeah.
Excel has a full-blown programming language under the cover. You don't need to access it. You can get to a lot of it through the user interface. Excel is the bomb.
I wish they'd update Access.
Yeah, Access is, there's been updates to it, but it's kind of what it is.
Access is the bomb too. I love Access.
I know.
It's great, but it does have some shortcomings, and
It
I wish
does.
it was a little bit more versatile.
Yeah.
but nothing else in the world will let you right-click on a single value and immediately filter all records. Nothing
That's
does
true.
that. And that is awesome. You can put your feet up on the table and analyze your data with the mouse.
Yeah.
Okay, access is great. Can we move on now?
Yes. For anyone that doesn't know what SQL looks like, this is it. And it is not the kind of thing that you would think of as, geez, this is the answer to all the questions that I have. But SQL Server lets you create databases, which the simplest way of thinking of are files. I have many databases here. Okay? And the databases are where we store our data. Then what we have, and this gets a tad confusing because you hear people like us do this all day long, we write SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. And what it means is that, believe it or not, the secret to everything we do breaks down to there's only 4 commands in SQL. Select, which means retrieve, insert, which means add, update, and delete. So what you'll see is the SQL statements here, they have a select, and then they have a from. Select some fields from somewhere. Give me some criteria. Remember, to get information out of data, we tend to just restrict our view or summarize it. And then order by. Oh, that's a fancy way of saying sort. Okay, so the thing is, people like us will come and write SQL statements. For every program all of us use, someone has written a SQL statement more than likely. Okay? And then we'll come here and we'll execute a command and we'll get a bunch of data. Okay, so the data that I got back, I can't see everything on my screen, it's changed the resolution. But anyhow, this is just some data that I'm going to copy out of SQL manually. We're talking about a lot of things here. I don't want anyone to think that you can't do it on your own. It is not that difficult. The first time I sat down in front of this, I was terrorized, terrified. But I didn't know where to start. And if you start here on this screen, it's probably going to give you the same result. So let's not start on that screen. Let's start with some data that we have. And let's go to a familiar environment. So we're copying the data out of there, and we're coming over here into a spreadsheet, and we're pasting it. Okay? For all of us that use Excel, we know that it cuts and pastes very nicely, but sometimes not as nice as we would like it to be. So just with some quick formatting, we can make it more understandable. And this is stuff that we do every day. Just tell it which way we want it to display. Okay, get rid of some data I really don't want to see. Notice what I'm doing. I'm narrowing the perspective down. It doesn't matter what this data is. It could be any data. But everyone uses sales data, you know? So we have this data right now. Does anyone know how simple it is to turn that into a database? We're going to just create a copy of it because I need it for something else. Okay, so now it created another tab with the same data. You know how hard it is to turn it into a database? Control T. I have a database. I now have these groovy little tools that I can start to slice and dice my data. For example, I want to see, and I know we won't understand this, it doesn't matter. I want to see how many lock requests happen per second, okay? And I want to see when they were happening. We can instantly filter on it, and now we have more information. But notice, there's duplicate records here with the time. And when I think back on what I did, I deleted some columns. So I've actually distorted my data by trying to clean it. So again, all I needed to do was not delete those columns. And then what we find out is this start time is actually for another instance of it. So it would have been okay. The point I want you to get out of this is we could immediately get data analysis capabilities by getting our data in Excel with the simple Control T. It takes a range of data and it makes it a table. Okay, Excel has equally impressive capabilities to analyze data, and we're going to create something called a pivot chart.
Doug, I think we're going to have to wrap up.
That's fine, we're just about done, Bob. Okay. Here I have 3 fields. Okay, who knows what a pivot table is? I am impressed. The last presentation we gave, I had to actually go look it up, and I've done them for years. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's a way of easily massaging your data to get multiple views. The great news is Excel gives it to us. Okay, so anyhow, I have 3 values here. I can't see everything. There it is. Okay. I'm sorry, you guys. My screen is very small. Okay, now that's looking more like usable data. Does everyone know that? You can hold the control key and roll the mouse in Excel and zoom. Zooming is good. It helps to work on a 24-inch screen. Okay. So we'll just have to assume that we can see this a little more clearly. But see, out of the data that I had, it is very apparent, that quick, what we need to focus on. It's the highest point on the chart. I don't mean to insult anyone. I know everyone knows how to analyze things like a chart or that. But do you see how quickly we came from the complex? Okay, great. I got a list of data. Maybe it's a dump of data from my bank, or a list of calls that the children made on the cell phone, which they promised they'd only use to talk to us on. You could easily put it into Excel and get some information back out of it. Okay?
One of the nice things also on this is that you can actually kind of divide the tasks here. So you could make an Excel sheet so that the Excel sheet will go all out to the database, pull the data that you're looking for, and create this chart. Now the nice thing about that is you can have one person at your organization who knows how to do that and who can go and give, here, let me do that worksheet for you, let me give that worksheet for you, let me give you that worksheet. And then every time those end users open up that Excel sheet, it goes out to the database and pulls up the latest data. So in order to use these tools, you can actually segregate a little bit so you have a small number of people that have a higher skill level. Why? Higher cost. Okay? But those people can do work that is very reproducible to other people who their skill lies in other areas. So you can distribute this stuff relatively easily. Okay? And the other one, and I apologize I didn't have time for, is the SQL Server reporting services, where you actually can send people to websites and they can run reports. So they can go to a website and see the report and yada, yada, yada. So, good stuff. Get back over here real quick.
Is that just like a repository? Or it just?
In this particular example,
No.
or SSRS?
Yeah.
SSRS, actually, there are 2 databases on the SQL Server that hold the report definitions. And so the users go and they bring up those reports and then they run them, they add whatever parameters they have, and go for it.
SSRS is just the reporting capability. It's a way to simply create reports when you look at you still access the, oh, sorry. You had SQL here. SSRS is a way to easily pull it out in a web-based report.
So can you hang around for a couple minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so we can talk about that a bit more. So.